At the beginning of July 1940, the Italian Navy and Air Force compiled Operation TGM, which was the defense of 5 merchant ships that were traveling to Benghazi with troops and equipment for a planned offensive against Egypt. The plan called for the merchant ships to depart Naples at 1800 on the 6th of July, and they were to arrive at Benghazi 2 days later on the 8th. Simultaneously, the Royal Navy was defending 2 convoys with a total of 7 merchant ships that were transferring between Malta and Alexandria. Both navies would end up dedicating a handful of battleships to the defense of these convoys. For the Italians, they had the 5th Division's Giulio Cesare and Conte di Cavour, with Cesare acting as flagship for Admiral Inigo Campioni. The British would dedicate the 1st Battleship Divisions Royal Sovereign and Malaya, along with Warspite acting as flagship for Admiral Andrew Cunningham. The moment each side made a move to defend their convoys, the other's air force had carried out successful reconnaissance, and this meant that both the Italians and British were aware that both sides had battle fleets present in the same area of operation. Ultimately, neither side's convoys would be attacked by the opposing battle fleet, but the 2 battle fleets would eventually come to engage each other on the afternoon of the 9th of July, 1940. Prior to the battle during the early hours of the 9th, Cunningham was informed that the Italian fleet was located northeast of Serenica, and so he decided to make his battle fleet sail northwest and position his ships between Alexandria and Taranto harbor. Meanwhile, the Italian reconnaissance aircraft did not recognize the British had made this move because it was still dark, and German cryptographic services in Berlin informed the Italians that the British fleet was headed towards the eastern side of Sicily, which was incorrect. With this incorrect information at hand, Admiral Campioni devised a plan and ordered his vessels to assemble east-southeast of Calabria in 4 columns, with his 2 battleships focused in the center of the formation. Once assembled, they would sail east-southeast and then reversed west-northwest, doubling back and forth until contact with the Mediterranean fleet was made. During the late morning hours on the 9th of July, the Italian Air Force would send out reconnaissance aircraft to search for the Mediterranean fleet based on the information provided by Berlin. However, with that information having been correct, the Italians were looking in the wrong places. During the same time frame, aircraft launched from HMS Eagle located the Italians, and, during the early afternoon, it would carry out torpedo attacks against the Italian fleet without any success. At 13:30, a seaplane on anti-submarine duties located the Mediterranean fleet and reported that its position was 80 miles northeast of the Italian fleet. 2 more reconnaissance aircraft would later confirm the sighting, but the distance was only 50 miles from the Italian fleet. With this information at hand, Admiral Campioni ordered at 1400 that his fleet increase speed to 25 knots and move north in order to place themselves between the Mediterranean fleet and Taranto harbor, so there was an open line of retreat if necessary. On the other hand, Andrew Cunningham continued on his northwest course until 1400. Then, once he believed he was between the Italian fleet and Taranto, he ordered his vessels to head west. Contact was now inevitable, and at 1452, HMS Neptune spotted Italian destroyers off its port bow, and 8 minutes later, this was confirmed by Orion. As for the Italians, the 4 torpedo boats that compiled the 9th Destroyer Squadron located the British cruisers off their starboard bows at 15:05. With visibility favoring the British, at 15:10, the 4 light cruisers of Force A opened fire at a range of 20,000 meters. The Battle of Punta Stilo was now underway. The first half hour of the battle would be dominated by cruisers and destroyers trading fire, but this section of the battle was very chaotic, and ultimately, many ships could not engage because the range was too great. Ultimately, the battle would reach its climax at 1553, when Cesare and Cavour engaged Warspite at a range of roughly 26,000 meters. It's worth mentioning that this battle range was near the maximum end of what the 2 Cavour-class battleships could engage in, as, depending on which source you read, they had a maximum battle range of 28 to 30,000 meters. An interesting note about this point in the battle is that upon opening fire, Cesare correctly identified its target as Warspite at a distance of 26,000 meters. However, Cavour believed it was shooting a different battleship at a range of 30,000 meters, but based on British accounts, we know that both Italian battleships were engaging Warspite. Meanwhile, Warspite was targeting Cesare, and it had also registered a range of 26,000 meters. Both sides showed excellent targeting, with early salvos causing straddles on hostile ships, but the Italians were unable to land hits due to faults with the 320mm guns, resulting in poor dispersion. In turn, the British exercised both good targeting and excellent dispersion, which resulted in them drawing first blood at 1559, with 3 shells straddling Cesare and 1 striking it. The shell would pass through the Cesare's after funnel, penetrate its upper deck, and then explode on the port side of the shelter deck, causing a massive fire. This fire produced large quantities of smoke, which ended up getting sucked into the ship through the ventilation system into boiler rooms 4, 5, 6, and 7, resulting in all 4 of these rooms being evacuated, and Cesare's speed dropping to 18 knots as it lost steam pressure. To make matters worse for the Italians, at 16:05, the light cruiser Neptune scored 3 hits on the heavy cruiser Bolzano, which resulted in it losing mobility. Believing that his flagship had been severely damaged due to its loss of speed and the extreme fire raging amidships, Admiral Campione ordered his fleet to disengage at 16:05, and by 16:15 the battle had concluded. Damage control would leap into action, and within a couple of hours they successfully contained and extinguished the fires, and boiler room personnel managed to re-enter rooms 4 and 5, reactivating those boilers, though 6 and 7 would remain offline, so Cesare could only make a speed of roughly 23.5 knots. With the flames having been extinguished, an evaluation of the damage that had been sustained could finally be undertaken, and it was realized that Cesare had not actually been severely damaged. Though it appeared that the 15-inch shell had exploded within Cesare's hull, it actually exploded at the base of the port side of the funnel, and the cap of the shell continued down into the ship. The cap would end up passing through the ammunition lockers for the No. 4 120mm turret, causing the ready-use ammunition to catch fire. It would also pass through the ammunition lockers for the No. 4 37mm gun mount, which resulted in its ammunition exploding. The flames from these 2 sources would then spread to other flammable materials like wood, life vest, and rags that were stored in their locations. Of course, as I already mentioned, the dense smoke kicked up by these flames would be sucked into the ventilation system and then spread down into the bowels of the ship, resulting in 4 boiler rooms being abandoned, though no damage actually occurred to these boiler rooms. Besides the holes caused in the funnel and decks by the 15-inch shell itself, there were a few other components of Cesare that were taken out of action. The numbers 2, 4, and 6 120mm secondary battery turrets were all disabled, though the number 6 turret was brought back online. Both 37mm anti-aircraft guns at Station 4 were destroyed, while one at Station 3 was disabled. Finally, the steam pipes for boilers 5, 7, and 8 were all destroyed. Where Cesare suffered the most was in its crew losses, as, for 1 hit being obtained, 48 men were killed and 68 were wounded, though over the upcoming weeks more men would die as a result of their wounds, bringing the death toll to 66. Cesare would ultimately arrive at La Spezia on the 13th of July, and repairs would begin the next day, with them being completed by the 31st of July. While the ship was under repair for those 2 weeks, the Italians also took the opportunity to replace its 13.2mm machine guns with 20mm machine guns. The ship would then rejoin the battle fleet as if nothing had happened to it less than a month prior. This was the first time in World War II that an Italian battleship took damage in the line of battle, and the consequences were rather minor. However, in the upcoming years, Italian battleships would be attacked by the British several times, resulting in damage that was far more severe than what Cesare had suffered. However, those are stories for other days. So, if you have learned something new in this video, why not leave a like and a comment down below, and have a wonderful day.